Hello everybody, it's Jess and welcome back, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am going to talk about the books that I read in November. Finally, it's been a few days coming. I finally have the chance to film this video and there aren't many books to talk about, so this should be super short, but without further ado, let's just dive into it. So yeah, I read 4 books in November, which is probably the least amount of books I've read of any month this year, but it's definitely been a better reading month this November than it has been for the previous few. November always seems to be a very weird and slumpy month for me for some reason. I never tend to read a lot. I'm lucky if I read like 1 book in November. So I managed 4 this time around, which, it's great. I only have one standout book of November, which I'll talk about at the end. So let's start with the 3-star books. By the way, Luna is just chilling. She's asleep right now, but I've tried to film this video already and she just keeps getting up because she just wants to be the centre of attention and she's very curious. So, if she pops up at any time, yeah, don't worry about it. I mean, she's cute, so it's always good to have a dog in my video because it might boost the ratings. But anyway, let's talk about my 3-star reads. So let's start with the first book that I read in November. That is The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. So I actually started this on Halloween night. I was given the evening off on Halloween, so I spent some of it working my way through this, and then I finished it the day after, so I'm going to include it in my November wrap up, obviously. I didn't love this as much as I thought I would. It is a classic horror book. It's a ghost story. We're following this junior solicitor called Arthur Kipps. He goes to this woman's house. She's recently passed away and he is there to deal with her estate, her will, all of that. He stays in the house that she lived in and there's some creepy goings on. And I liked the atmosphere of this. I just wished it would have been longer. It is a very short book and I would have liked a lot more depth into the characters, into the house, into this woman. I just didn't feel the tension. I didn't feel the foreboding that I hoped it would have, It just wasn't creepy and I didn't feel uneasy reading it. And also I was kind of bored a little bit. Like, the writing style isn't my favourite style. So it did take me a bit of time to get into it, and I wasn't a huge fan of the ending. Like, it was okay. I enjoyed it for what it was. I was just expecting a little bit more, especially because, like I said, it's a very popular horror book. There's a film, a lot of people love this, but it just didn't really do much for me, but it was still a fun time. So my next 3-star read is The Dead Wife by Sue Fortin. Had this book on my shelf for years. I want to say like 3 years now, and every year I said, I'm going to read this. This is on my priority list. Never read it because I'm a terrible person, but I finally got round to it in November, and initially I thought this book was going to be a 4 stars because I was really invested in it, but the ending, it was satisfying, but I feel like this book went on for longer than it needed to. There was a lot of telling and not enough showing, in my opinion. This is about this travel journalist, and she goes to this health and wellness place, which is in the Peak District or the Lake District. I think it's the Lake District. And it's owned by this guy called Harry Sinclair. Now, Harry Sinclair's wife died 2 years previous. She was found in the lake and she was assumed, that she'd taken her own life, or whatever, you know, she drowned and people just assumed that she'd taken her own life or it was an accident or something. But there is obviously a lot more to that story, and this journalist Steph is uncovering things. She is contacted by Elizabeth Sinclair's mother, who is convinced that she was murdered. And so Steph, on the sly, is trying to find out, you know, some information from Harry and his brothers about what might have happened without them knowing. She's, you know, investigating it on her own, and trying to piece together what happened to Elizabeth. And yeah, I enjoyed it. And I was really, really hooked. Like, the first half was really interesting. There was a lot of really interesting twists and like clues and things, and I thought I had it figured out. To be honest, I wasn't that surprised by the ending, but I wasn't expecting it that much, if that makes sense. Like, I wasn't surprised by it, but it also wasn't the first thing that I thought of, but it made a lot of sense and it was a satisfying ending. There could have been a lot more character development. I feel like we could have got to know the characters a little bit more. I feel like we could have got to know a little bit more of the backstory. Like, I just feel like there was something missing. And don't get me wrong, I loved the atmosphere in this book, and I loved the descriptions of the lake and this holiday park, and it just, you know, it just sounded beautiful, this setting, and it made me want to go there. But I just wish that it would have been a more character-centric story than plot-centric. Maybe there could have been a nice balance of both, but yeah, it was a fun time, and I do recommend it. It's not too difficult to read. I read this one quite quickly. Very easy writing style, very easy to follow. I love the horrible characters, you know, I love reading about absolutely abhorrent people, so that was right up my street. I just feel like it could have been shorter, or that there could have been a lot more, you know, character development and things like that. So yeah, that was 3 stars. And then my last 3-star book of November, which is one that I'm kind of disappointed about because I was really looking forward to reading this. And again, it was a fun time. It just wasn't what I was hoping it to be. The Apollo Murders by Chris Hadfield. So Chris Hadfield is a Canadian astronaut. He was commander on the International Space Station some years ago. I've read his non-fiction and I really enjoyed it. This was his first foray into the fiction genre. It's kind of sci-fi, but not, because it kind of, you know, it's very accurate to things that would happen in space and on a mission to the moon. You know, he's had that experience. He knows what he's talking about. And I liked that. But I was kind of bored by this, I'm not gonna lie. So this is set in 1973 and we are following 3 astronauts on the last manned mission to the moon. But there is also a lot of political elements to this story because the Americans find out that the Russians have launched this moon module, not module, like moon rover to the moon, and they've also launched this satellite, and the Americans are trying to figure out what the Russians are doing. So they take a little detour along the way to disable this Russian satellite and stop them from doing whatever the Americans believe the Russians are doing. Yeah, it's very political and there's a lot of tension. And it's based off a lot of conspiracies. This book is also based off some true events, but there's a lot of liberties taken with the story. It does feature a lot of real people, which Chris Hadfield does talk about at the end of the book. Again, with this, there was not enough showing and too much telling, and I was kind of forcing my way through this a little bit in the middle because, yeah, it just, a lot of the science jargon and stuff I understood, but I wasn't that bothered by it. You know, I just wanted the story. I wanted the tension. I wanted the excitement. It was very slow paced for what I was hoping would be a very fast paced thriller. And also, what was with the first chapter or the prologue being in first person and the rest being in third? I don't really understand why that decision was made, because it kind of jolted me out of the story immediately. I thought it was going to be a first person story, and then nope, the rest of it was third person. But yeah, it was just it was a weird one. Like, I liked it. I liked the plot. I liked the characters. I mean, there are some characters that I absolutely hated, but I was meant to hate them. I liked that I hated them, and Chris Hadfield did a very good job of conveying how much of an arsehole this one particular character was. And I couldn't stand him. But I don't know. It's tricky to talk about this one without spoiling it, because there were a lot of plot twists in this that I felt didn't make sense sometimes. I was just a little bit, left feeling very underwhelmed by this. And the ending just didn't satisfy me at all. I wanted more. And I wanted more time on the moon. I don't feel like we got enough time on the moon. I mean, if you like space thrillers, you might like this one. But it just, it wasn't what I hoped it would be, unfortunately. All right, so let's talk about the standout book, the book that was by far my favourite book of November, maybe one of my favourite books of the year. I mean, definitely one of my favourite books of the year, but is it going to be my favourite book of the year? I don't know. You'll have to wait to see. But Notes on an Execution by Dania Kakavka. An easy, solid 5 stars. Oh my gosh, this book was incredible, and everything that everyone has been saying about it is so true. It is just, it's perfection, right? This book is about a man who is on death row, and we are following the stories of 3 of the women involved in this man's life. So we're following his mother, we are following a girl that he grew up with, who is now a police detective, and we are also following his sister-in-law. And we're seeing how they're all connected to him, what their lives were like when he was around, before he was in prison. And we're seeing how they have reacted to the news of the crimes that he's committed and the fact that he is being put to death. I thought it was very interesting, and it was a very nuanced conversation about the death penalty. It definitely makes you think about the death penalty and the pros of it and the cons of it, of which there are both. It's a very hot topic. It's something that will get people riled up. We don't have the death penalty here in the UK. It was abolished many, many decades ago. I can see the arguments for it. I can also see the arguments against it. It's a very grey subject. You know, there's a lot of things involved in it that, you know, have to be considered and discussed. And yeah, this book definitely got me thinking about my own stances on the death penalty. And I just thought it was very well written. It was very emotional. It was beautiful at times as well. It was funny sometimes. It was also sad. And yeah, I was just so invested in this story and the lives of these 3 women and this guy. And it's so funny because Danya Kafka made me feel sympathy for this man that was on death row, because there are some chapters written by him where he talks about what he's done, how he's feeling, what his time has been like in prison. It's counting down the hours, so I think we meet him like 24 hours before he's put to death, and he's counting down the hours, and we're kind of following him through those last few moments of his life, and we're seeing his thoughts and his feelings. And I found myself feeling really sorry for him. And then I'm like, but why? Because he's done such a horrible thing. This is why he's being put to death. You know, he's a horrible person. He's killed people. You know, he deserves this. But then I'm also like, but I really feel for him. Does he deserve it? You know, it's terrifying. If that was me, I would be terrified. And it was really interesting how she made me feel that, those conflicting thoughts about this guy. And when a writer can do that, it's incredible. So I absolutely love this book. It is stunning. I haven't stopped thinking about it since I finished it, and I would love to read it again sometime soon. And yeah, I highly recommend it. Go and read it if you haven't. I promise you won't be disappointed. Alright guys, those are the 4 books that I read in November. Yeah, it wasn't the best reading month in terms of ratings, but you know, it was still a good time either way. But yeah, that's it for this video. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of the books that I've talked about and what you thought of them, whether you agree with me or not, because I always love to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. You can leave a cheeky thumbs up if you like this video, and you can also subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button so you will be notified every single time I do upload. And yeah, having said all of that, I will see all of you lovely people in my next video very soon. Bye guys.